Ben Keer going to give up football for now to concentrate on wrestling. The impact to Iowa football. Plus, the great Scott Dochterman joins us to talk Iowa football, Big Ten scheduling, what it's going to look like on TV, and a whole lot more. All today, Locked On Hawkeyes.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts, and you can also find us on YouTube. Make sure you hit that subscribe button while you're there. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. We get started today with the news of Ben Keer. After a redshirt season, both on the football field and on the wrestling mat, he has made the decision, and one that I think we maybe had a feeling was going to be coming. For the upcoming season, at least for the next 10 months, Ben Keer announced on Monday evening that he is going to move away from football and concentrate solely on the wrestling mat. Now, after what he did last weekend, qualifying for the team and making the under 20 team with Team USA, kind of a no-brainer to have that kind of opportunity to be involved in international competition. No, it's not the Olympics, but for a guy that has still not even hit that plateau in terms of age and moving his way up, still has not even competed for a full season on the wrestling mat. A lot to be said, obviously, about what he is and just what a dynamic athlete that he is. We knew this was going to be difficult. We knew when he made the decision that he was going to try to play both football and wrestle at the University of Iowa, that this was going to be an incredibly difficult path for him to go through. Not only do you have the two seasons overlapping, you also have the part of it where just the physicality of both sports. And recently we saw Brody Breck try to do something similar, to play two sports at Iowa, and eventually he had to give up football and concentrate on baseball. For him, it was a no-brainer. He has millions of dollars waiting for him at the next level, Major League Baseball, which makes it an easy decision. Maybe his first love was football. And in the past, we heard Brody Breck mention how important it was for him to run out of the tunnel at Kinnick Stadium. Somebody that grew up a Hawkeye fan and grew up wanting to wear the black and gold and play in Kinnick Stadium. And he got that opportunity, but eventually Brody wasn't going to be an NFL wide receiver. What he was going to be is, if not a first-round pick, a top 2-round pick, and we're going to see that coming up in the amateur draft here in a few short weeks. He made the right decision, but there's no pro wrestling. Well, there is, but it's not wrestling, right? It's entertainment. There is not what we're used to, and there's not those millions of dollars that are waiting like Brody Breck for Ben Keer. But Ben Keer is an elite level wrestler. This is a guy I remember watching him for the first time as a freshman and just being absolutely astounded of what we were seeing. You see young guys on the wrestling mat, even at the 3A level, at the big school level in the state of Iowa, and you see some good things, right? You see eye-opening performances, but it's wrestling down. It's wrestling in the lower weights. You don't see it from the big guys. But right away you saw Ben Keer, what made him so special. And it's continued on the international stage. He's done some incredible things on the international stage already. He's done things that very few wrestlers have done this early in their career. But with football and wrestling, these are two sports that are very difficult, even if you're as dedicated as a guy like Ben Keer is. It's just going to be incredibly difficult to be able to put everything you need into both of those sports. Yes, it is still about strength, incredibly important in both of those sports, but just the time that you need to dedicate to play at a high level, to play at the Big Ten wrestle, to wrestle at the Big Ten level, it takes so much. And these two sports, I think, take away. You couple that with the way that the seasons go. Best case scenario for him as a wrestler, you have a disappointing year, you don't even make a bowl game. Still, by the time that you're going to be ramped up and ready to go for the wrestling season, you're talking about, at best, maybe right before Christmas, likely after Christmas. You've already left 8-10 matches maybe out there that you don't get to. And in the grand scheme of things, that doesn't matter, but get your body right. What if there's a nagging injury coming off the football season? Those kind of things absolutely can be there. I do have the question. I do wonder myself. He says he's going to be back for spring football in 2025. That was in his statement that he put up on Instagram, that he's going to be back for spring football. Is that actually going to happen? And something that I've been talking about since he was in high school, doesn't it make more sense for him to simplify things? He wants to get bigger. He wants to get at a level. He mentioned last weekend after qualifying for the team that he wants to get more in that 245 to 255 range, something like that. Getting up there, you don't see many linebackers anymore at that kind of size. Even middle linebackers anymore, it's a rarity to see guys playing at that kind of size. And because of that, does it make sense for him to transform into a defensive end? Don't have to worry about the weight at the same kind of level. You can add more power to yourself when you're building your body to be a defensive end as opposed to being a linebacker. But the question is, will we actually see him in a football uniform again? It takes a lot. But if he has this successful season that you'd anticipate this year on the wrestling mat, not just what he's doing in September with the team, trials over in Spain, but what he's going to do on the wrestling mat for the Hawkeyes this upcoming season. So he goes out and wins the national championship, and after a redshirt year has a possibility of being a 4-time national champion. That's something that is hard to say, you know what, I'm going to move away from that for a while to play some football. It's hard to see. We're going to see Scott Dochterman. He's going to join us next. A lot of great conversation with Scott Dochterman. Great guy on the Iowa beat. A lot of Hawkeye questions. Also plenty of Big Ten questions. This past week at The Athletic had a great column basically taking you behind the scenes in the scheduling for the Big Ten. How did this come together? The remaining games on the Iowa schedule, how are they going to come together in terms of what time those games are going to kick off, what television networks are going to take them? We'll dig into that, all that, and a whole lot more. We'll talk a little bit about Caitlin Clark as well after that weekend that she just endured after the 2 games against the Chicago Sky on Saturday, and then Sunday, a blowout loss to the New York Liberty. We'll hit on that and a whole lot more as we come back. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. Today's episode of the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. Couple of things there. I own a small business. I make hires from time to time. Trying to find those quality candidates is incredibly difficult, and using LinkedIn Jobs just simplifies the process so much. When you're also running your small business, you know time is money. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't even visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified, quality candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows small businesses, you have so much going on. You might not have the time or the resources to make that hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process even easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process quicker and easier. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Let's get to Scott Dochterman. He covers the Big Ten, the Hawkeyes for The Athletic, and Doc joins us. Doc, Trent, and Ken, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. I want to start with as we do a lot of weeks, that's patting you on the back for another great column. I love the schedule breakdown you did at The Athletic, Doc. I guess from your perspective, as you went through it, was there anything that made you pause for a second to say, "One didn't realize that," or "Boy, that's a lot to ask"? What were some of your takeaways from the work you did?
Yeah, thank you. And I would say first I would go with the other Black Friday game, Minnesota and Wisconsin, because back in the land before time, you could say, when Nebraska wanted to back out of Black Friday, and the Big Ten flipped Iowa and Wisconsin to the season finale, and Wisconsin was adamantly against moving a game to Black Friday. But what I had learned is through that process, talking to Kerry Kenny, is that right now there are tolerances that schools are allowed to have for certain things that they say, oh no, we're never going to do that, or well, we don't really want to because of high school football. Well, those have been shrunk quite a bit, and so I think the Black Friday game alongside Iowa, Nebraska is one. I think when I was discussing the schedule and the layout, the other one that kind of came about it was Michigan State's situation, playing host to Ohio State, and then 6 days later flying to Oregon. That has been discussed in the future, and something like that will be avoided. But I think there's so much nuance when you're dealing with these games. Washington State, that's going to be at the Seahawks Stadium. They wanted to play it at night on NBC, but then the Mariners wouldn't, and Major League Baseball wouldn't move their game. So they got stuck kind of 3:30 on Peacock, and but you still get a Rose Bowl entry for a UCLA and prime time. So there's just a lot of meat there, a lot of different things. It's always fascinating, and then going forward, every Friday we'll have a game on it.
Every Friday going forward, you mentioned some of those things that universities, athletic departments have said the Big Ten are non-negotiable. How's it pertain to Iowa? They play the Black Friday game every year. I know in the past you've mentioned to us they're willing to play Labor Day, but it's incredibly difficult because of the hospital and the structure there. Is there a likelihood that we will, I never want to say ever, but say it during this TV deal, that outside of Labor Day or Black Friday, that Iowa will play another home game on a Friday night?
Very, very, very doubtful. I mean, that is one that has been, in the past, is certainly one that they've said no to. The Big Ten has agreed because of the logistics. I mean, you're talking about a world-class hospital and series of hospitals across the street in a very tight, confined area for no matter what is going on in that area. And then trying to fit in a game when you have all kinds of traffic for the normal course of business. It's almost an impossibility, at least with Labor Day Friday, that a lot of people take that day off, or you can kind of massage some of the parking lots. But on a traditional Friday, they can't do that, because even on game days, on a Saturday, if there's like a collision out on I-80, it's not ambulances that bring them in. It's helicopters, because there's no way to get in and out on a safe manner. So I don't see that being the case. And then Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan are the three others that aren't going to be hosting on Fridays. Just simply, the logistics of State College or Ann Arbor, for sure, having 110,000 people coming in a small town on a work day is very difficult. And Michigan has been adamant about not playing on Friday at all. And part of it is, well, okay, go ahead and concede to Michigan. But the other part is that the Big Ten has to be cognizant of the teams or the networks and its media partners for Saturday packages. And Michigan, Penn State, and Ohio State are largely going to be considered, for those top three spots almost every time they play. So they have to keep that open. So that's part of the reason why. But the Friday game, they're looking at it somewhere between games 4 through 6, which is pretty high up on the scale when you think about it, and you're getting some of the games that they got and they moved.
Doc, do you think that there was any back and forth when it came to the 6:30 kickoff at Kinnick for the Black Friday game? I mean, I got to believe if they would have had their choice, they wouldn't want to play it at night. I love it personally, selfishly. But was did Iowa, did Beth Getz, did anybody try and politic, are we sure that this is the right way to go with this game?
No, there's been no real discussion about that, because Wisconsin has the same issue, except Wisconsin has a heated field and Iowa doesn't. So there's really no. When you're told to play sometime, you play it, and there's really no negotiation the way it used to be. I mean, that's part of your tolerances. but I don't think Iowa. There are times when they'll say, sorry, we just can't help you there. And that would be like, hey, we don't want to play on Friday night because of high school football. That doesn't wash anymore. Right. So no, Iowa would not have been able to project it. I like it myself, and I think Iowa fans should too, just simply because you get a full Thanksgiving in now. Mm-hmm. Before, if it was an 11 o'clock kick, you're like, well, maybe we need to travel and stay in a hotel, or maybe we need to do that. Now you can, Thanksgiving is at your leisure, which is something that I can't say that I've had since 2009.
Yeah, really.
Doc, I know I'm not alone looking for another night game for Iowa Kinnick Stadium. Black Friday, okay. Tailgating in late November, a little bit different than during the rest of the fall months, where it's a little bit more fun than sitting out there freezing and trying to drink your frozen beer. I was looking at the Washington game, but I heard you a week ago on a podcast kind of describe that week you have Ohio State at Oregon, Penn State at USC. The likelihood is both those games, well, they can't kick off at 11 a.m. our time. They have to be later than that. That potentially Washington, Iowa, I thought a perfect spot for a night game. That game might be the 11 a.m. Fox game.
Yeah, that's largely what's probably going to happen. Is when you look at that week, there are three games that kind of jump out at you, and Washington at Iowa is one of those three. I mean, and because the other two cannot be played at 9 a.m. Pacific time, that means Washington at Iowa is going to be the one that's probably circled, and Fox would be happy with that game. I mean, you get pretty good teams, so that one's not going to be the case. You got 2:30 set already for Northwestern. You have Wisconsin's got a possibility, but I would probably say no, just simply because of the other. This doesn't operate in a solo environment here, So when you got Ohio State and Penn State, and you've got Michigan and Oregon, they're going to claim the top two spots. And then the other three, USC in Washington, Iowa and Wisconsin, and the other one was UCLA and Nebraska. Those are going to kind of fight for number three. So there's a possibility, but it would have to. CBS would have to be number two that week for that to happen, and I don't know what the pecking order is. So I would say that one would probably be the most likely outside of the ones that we know.
Doc, have you heard any disappointment? I guess maybe from Hawkeye fans. I got the sense that there were certainly a number of them at least kicking the tires with going out to LA to watch the game against UCLA. But now that it's on a Friday, makes it maybe a little bit more difficult for some. Obviously, don't you think there won't be as many Hawkeye fans potentially at the Rose Bowl because it's a Friday opposed to a Saturday?
I don't know. I mean, I think that's silly. I mean, if you're going to go to California, when are you going to go? You're going to go Saturday morning and fly back Sunday? I mean, if you're going to go to LA, go to LA. If you're going to have to take a day off from work 6 months from now, take it off, or 5 months from now, take it off. Go. I mean, it's one thing, I guess, if it's a drive, or you're talking about Columbus, then that's okay. I get it. But if you're going to go to LA, go to LA. So no, I mean, if you're disappointed, be disappointed. But I can tell you this, that knowing 18 teams and the schedules and the networks and everything, sometimes you just got to be happy with what you got. And Iowa is not number one on the podium here for schools that they're worrying about. So I think it's a great game and a great environment in the Rose Bowl, and getting a solo window is going to be a good thing for Iowa.
Scheduling a great component over there. Love the article and trying to kind of put this jigsaw puzzle together and figure it out. Another piece he had last week at The Athletic talked about recruiting in the Chicagoland. Doc, it's a conversation, well, you and I have been having for as long as you've been on the Iowa football beat. Chicagoland area for Iowa football, they look at it as that's basically part of their home state. Take us into the story a little bit and the Iowa perspective when you're talking about Chicagoland recruiting.
It's a great area for a lot of teams. It's kind of the capital of the old Big Ten. Mm-hmm. And Iowa used to fight, with several teams even to get its developmental prospects out of Chicago. I mean, as you guys are well know, Mark Morehouse and I used to talk about three polar bears fighting over the same sheet of ice with Michigan State, Wisconsin, and Iowa. And since then, Iowa has kind of filled that vacuum to some extent. And part of the reason why Iowa is more successful today that it's probably been since in 20 years, or at least the mid part of the aughts, because Michigan State with its turnover has kind of vacated the area. Wisconsin with its turnover hasn't quite hit it as hard as it once did, and Fitzgerald, even though David Braun is doing an outstanding job by what the coaches tell us, there's still a new staff, and Iowa is one of the few schools that goes in there and still wants to develop prospects. And a lot of times, like some of the coaches told me, was the portal is really an enemy to high school coaching, because there might be a coach or two that comes in and says, look, we've got like 12 or 13 scholarships, and we're not going to and we can't really afford to go after a developmental prospect right now. We need to have somebody who can play right away, and so they avoid those, where Iowa's willing to go in and say, hey, Drew McPherson from Loyola, I know you're a quarterback and you play offense, but we project you as a safety. We want to come in and develop you. And then in their second or third year, they're a valuable contributor, and the coaches over there love that. So Iowa's reputation was the best out of the bunch, which is part of the reason why I wrote a second story about it. And I think, Seth Wallace has proven himself to be, he's probably the most respected recruiter in Chicago, which is helpful when they do go up against once in a while a Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Michigan. And they can kind of sell that. But I also say Matt Campbell has developed a nice reputation too. So he's somebody that when he goes in and he doesn't do it all that often, but he does it enough to where that there is a lot of respect for what he does.
Doc, away from football to the WNBA, was this weekend good or bad for the WNBA?
I think in the big picture, it can be a positive. In the narrow, it's not. And I think in the big picture, it is. They need to have conversations pronto as to how they want to not only officiate this game, but promote it. Because what I think a lot of people, the newer fans, have said and saw, and certainly in this state, is that they're disgusted by what they feel like is uneven or unfortunate treatment of Caitlin Clark. And I think the hit from behind the other day by Kennedy Carter was kind of the pushover in some ways, because if that's the way that she's going to continue to be played, she's plays for a bad team that's poorly coached, that has no spacing offensively, that does nothing to set her up, that has a lot of selfish players. If you have all of that on your team and she's not being successful, then people will turn away from it, and you're going to lose this unbelievable opportunity to grow the sport. And then there's also this gatekeeping that people who are WNBA fans who seem to think that if you haven't watched the sport, 3 years ago, then you don't have a right to comment. You know what? That's not the way society works, and that's not the way sports work. And some people seem to think, now she's stepping up to the WNBA competition. They got to remind us of that on every single game. And I look at it and I go, you know what? Nobody here's an idiot. We can watch it when a rookie goes into the NFL and struggles that, they're a rookie, or even the NBA, or Major League Baseball, or any other sport. So for some reason, they think there were a bunch of hayseeds in Iowa that we don't understand how the sports works. Well, everybody does. But I also understand that when teams aren't playing well, aren't coached well, aren't performing, and not backing up their teammates. And I think that's something that people need to understand and have a little session there to say, we don't want to ruin this opportunity, because they can make fun of us all they want in Iowa, but we're buying the apps, people are buying the shirts, they're watching the games, and if it doesn't change soon, as soon as training camps start opening up, nobody will watch it from this part.
Yeah, they're right. Put them back on, let them fly coach, let them go through TSA with everybody else, with the unwashed, see if they remember that. Those faraway times.
No hope
like
for
2 weeks.
Salaries increasing. Yeah,
none.
Good luck with that. Doc, final thing for me, we haven't had an opportunity to talk since the announcement. Peyton Sanford coming back for his final season in a Hawkeye uniform. It's a big change, at least the way that I see it, to this roster, and puts them at least potentially as a bubble team. Your thoughts on Sanford coming back in Iowa basketball now, going through the first time this 18 team configuration?
I think it's for Iowa. It's the first bit of really positive news on the men's basketball front we've seen in quite a while, because we've seen some guys leave, and the storylines that go with it. Tony Perkins and Patrick McCaffrey leave for the transfer portal. This is one, though, that it does elevate. It had the potential not only to elevate Iowa, but if he wouldn't have come back, would have forced or caused Iowa to fall. I think now Iowa looks to me to be an upper third to upper half team in the Big Ten, and how the newcomers come in, Thelwell at point guard, how, Cooper Koch and Chris Daggio, how they fit in, plus the growth of the other ones. I think Iowa has a chance now to be an NCAA tournament team. Whereas if he would have left, I would have said that they would have been fighting for potentially maybe not even getting in the Big Ten tournament, at least the flush. So, I think Peyton Sanford is that kind of a player that he can take this team from being 8th or 7th in the Big Ten, and if he's not there, 14th, 15th, 16th. So, that's how competitive the Big Ten is, and that's what his ability means to this program.
Great way to describe it, Doc. I forgot that everybody doesn't get a bid to the Big Ten tournament starting this year. Fair point. Well said. Scott Dochterman from The Athletic. Doc, what can we look forward to this week at The Athletic from you?
Yeah, I'm working on a story. It's about something that happened 4 years ago, and I think there's a lot of information that hasn't been uncovered yet. It's something that I don't know if I want to completely say.
No, I gotcha.
But it's also something that I think once it drops, and it should drop either tomorrow or possibly Wednesday, we'll have people talking.
Good stuff, Doc. Look forward to it. We'll speculate what it is when you're gone. Thank you, buddy.
Thanks. Have a good one.
Yeah, see you, Doc. Scott Dochterman from The Athletic. So 4 years.
Today's episode of the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. Well, it's winner take all time in the NBA and the NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and a whole lot more. You're looking at the NBA Finals, Mavericks and Celtics. Celtics are a 6.5-point favorite in Game 1, currently to win the championship. The Celtics minus 220 and plus 190 on the other side with the Mavericks. But that's not all. They got you covered. College football. Yes, we're still a little less than a couple months away. However, a little more than 2 months away. However, they got lines up for a bunch of games. They got futures up there to win the Big Ten and a whole lot more. You name it, they have it on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Trent Conner back with you one final time on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. We talked there with Scott Dochterman, and always a great talking and catching up with Doc about Caitlin Clark. And this has been a mess. It has been ugly. There's been frustrating moments, but what we saw on Saturday and over the weekend, some disappointing aspects. The physicality has gone too far. It's not good for the brand. It's not good for the league. And though the discourse and the conversations very well can be important, there's also the part that is a little bit uncomfortable. And there are elements to this that go deeper than just what's happening between the lines. There's a whole lot more out there. And social media has definitely increased that. The yakking shows, the hollering back and forth shows, they have taken it to another level. It's just not good. And as we look at it for Caitlin Clark and hoping for the best from one of the great and maybe the greatest ever to put on any Hawkeye uniform, to see her go through this, not having off season, not having the time to prepare that you normally see in any other sport, there are times that it does feel unfair. But one thing we do have to remember, and one thing that I think I need to remind myself even at times, is that Caitlin Clark doesn't need us to white knight her. She's tough. She has handled a lot. She has gone through things that very few athletes have done before and had to deal with in terms of her popularity. She's going to be fine. She's going to figure out this league. Is it going to take an off season to transform her body? I think that will help. But I also believe that we're going to see real improvement throughout the course of the season. And even with the struggles, leading the league in assists by a wide margin, a shooting percentage under 30% from three, Caitlin Clark under 30% on three-pointers. I didn't think I'd be uttering that kind of phrase outside of maybe a single one-off game. But that's where we are right now. And even with all that, and a team that isn't very good, a coach that looks completely over her head, she's still putting up numbers. She's still doing good things. Growing pains. The peaks and the valleys are more significant than I believed, but we don't have to come writing in for Caitlin Clark. She's going to be fine. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We'll be back with you tomorrow. We got a lot more going on. It's recruiting season, and that means we'll be talking recruiting with our guy, Brian Smith, breaking things down on the Locked On front. Some more prospects to talk about coming up in the class of 2025 that I was after. We're also going to take a look at what do they really need remaining in this class with the 8 commitments already on hand, knowing that it's not the old days where they're going after pretty much every year, about 20 to 22 prospects. How much more flexibility are they looking at next year's roster? And with that, with the transfer portal, knowing that next season I was going to be losing a ton, how many more high school prospects are the Hawkeyes going to be after? Roster construction, as important as it's ever been, that's going to be another topic we're going to be tackling this week. A whole lot more. We got basketball, we got football, we got the offseason of baseball. Iowa, where are they going to be looking for? Speaking of baseball, Adam Mazer watching his start here on Tuesday evening, making his debut with the San Diego Padres. A great thing to see out of him. We'll talk about that and a whole lot more. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Also want to let you know Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. It's on YouTube, and now it's available on the Amazon Fire TV in their free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Go Hawks.